So you talked about pattern interrupts, and let's just talk about some of those. I think that will be that will add a lot of value to our audience.
What is it? Talked about what?
Pattern interrupts. So you
Oh, pattern interrupts.
obviously,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So pattern interrupt, for folks that aren't familiar with that terminology, is just doing the unexpected. So
Mhm.
pattern interrupt could be something really playful. If it suits your ICP, maybe you send a GIF in your
Mhm.
email, right? So
Mhm.
it could be something
Mhm.
like that. Um, for me, I mentioned I really love doing handwritten notes. That is a
Mhm.
pattern interrupt because it is something that people aren't doing. So pattern interrupt is just doing the unexpected, and it interrupts the pattern of your prospect dismissing you quickly because it's the same thing they're seeing over and over again. Other pattern interrupts that I think are really easy to roll out that people just don't do very often are the use of video, both in email as well as on LinkedIn. People just are
Mhm.
still not using video. On LinkedIn, voice notes still work. I would A B test using a voice note as your first step in LinkedIn cold outreach, because it is a little bit weird when you see a voice note in your inbox from a total stranger and you can't read a transcript.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
if you're going to use a voice note, maybe make it your second message and then make sure that there's some context as to what sort of goes back to the concept of removing friction when you are sending that
Mhm.
deposit, like a case study or a white paper. Don't expect them to open the
Mhm.
48-page white paper and read all of it. Don't expect them to open the 45-second voice note without including at least one sentence to tell them like why it matters to them, why it's worth their time clicking play. But get creative. Pattern interrupts are a result of creative elements in your cold outreach. What I would caution individual contributors, sales leaders, etc., on is to first make sure that you have a very clear baseline of data so that you know what good looks like. And only then would I suggest you start adding those really creative touches into your copy, because then you can A B test and have a clear view on whether or not GIFs or memes work for your ICP. You can have a
Mhm.
really clear view on whether or not video has like that exponential lift for you, because video obviously takes more time. So it by having the baseline first, it allows you to be super creative and test whatever you want, but then have the clarity of whether or not it works, so that as you continue to follow that always be testing philosophy, you're doing it in a way that um, actually results in engagement and results in the the meetings that you need to have the pipe to have the revenue.
Okay, so this is another interesting thought that I came up. So there is this personalization part, and then comes obviously the pain point part. So how do you validate the pain point if I'm reaching the right person or not, if that exists or not? What strategies will you sort of like use over there?
To validate whether or not you're talking to the right person, I would say two approaches. Approach one would be looking at those trigger events, creating that segmentation, um, and doing the work in your outbound motions to create a ton of clarity around what good looks like. And we were talking earlier in this conversation about organizations having an ICP. They have an ICP, but it's often quite broad. So, really making sure that you, as the individual contributor, the person that is owning the outreach, understands the the trigger events and the mechanisms that will cause the different segments of that ICP to move. So I would say the first part is like, why would it matter enough to the person I'm talking to that they would want to spend their social capital butting up against the status quo to create change?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big one, right? So think about that in your
Mm-hmm.
outreach. But I think the other part of it, and like where I really focus on the process with my clients, is from that like ICP and value prop definition through to really strong discovery calls, like call one. And then I would say it sort of moves to middle of the funnel after that, which I like to stay more in the top of funnel. But on the discovery call, you better have a tight process for your pre-call research,
Mm-hmm.
so that you are going very, very deep in your understanding of how you are going to earn the right to ask this prospect to consider using their social capital, their time, their budget, their resources to consider and ultimately invest in your product or solution. And I use the phrase earn the right very selectively, because that is, earn the right is my sales methodology. And the gist of it is asking yourself, what have I done to earn the right to make this ask? So if it is asking them to read an email, what have I included in that email that is valuable or relevant to them that has earned me the right to make this ask of their time? If it is asking for a meeting, what have I shared with them to build the trust, to build the credibility that justifies asking them to spend time learning more? And when you think about it on a discovery call, how have I prepared to deliver value in this meeting that justifies me asking, that earns me the right to ask them to have a follow-up meeting, to consider investing in my product or solution, and to use their social capital to push against the status quo to get this mutually beneficial outcome that you would uncover on the call. But I think the pain point boils down to two things. One, you having enough clarity and doing enough research that you feel very confident you can earn that right from the jump, that you can offer that relevance and the value. And then two, when you have the privilege of engaging with your prospect, of interacting with your prospect, making sure that you are extraordinarily curious, so that you're leading with that mentality of helping and of seeking deep understanding, but you're doing it in the context of the research you've already done. So you're not starting calls with a, tell me everything about you, I'm going to have you do all the heavy lifting. You're really showing up to be that trusted advisor, which folks often will call like a consultative sales approach. But I think consultative sales is something that folks feel like only matters at the enterprise level. And I would argue that that mentality of earning the right matters whether or not you're selling to mom and pop shops, SMB, mid-market, enterprise. It matters for every single sales interaction that we have.
Okay, that's awesome. That's obviously you explained it in full detail. So you have also mentioned write emails that prospects reply to. Just give me an example as to what that might look like.
Sure. Okay. So a few things that you're going to want to do to write better emails. One is stop worrying so much about the subject line and instead focus on the preview text. So the preview text is the first 80 characters of your email, and it's inclusive of the subject line. So go through and audit all of your emails with the question in mind, would this first 80 characters make me want to learn more if I was this buyer, if I was this prospect? Because in order to get a reply, we need to get an open. So that is step one. Go through and audit all your emails to optimize for that first 80 characters, which is the preview text. Something that's really fun when you think about preview text versus subject line is that once you have your baseline of what good looks like, you can get really creative with the preview text. And so this might look like starting with the subject line format that is working best right now, which is a 2-word subject line, both words capitalized. So testing that for a sequence and seeing what the open rates are there. But then going back and maybe you have a subject line that is a whole sentence. And you test that because it's less about the actual subject line and it's more about what am I saying in that first 80 characters that makes the person I've sent this email to think, I'm interested in learning more. Okay, so that's a really, really big one. A couple of other easy pivots you can make to your email copy to get better replies are to shorten them. You should never be sending cold outreach that is more than, I'd say, like 80 words. I use data from a company called Reggie.ai, and I really work hard to keep my copy between 16 and 68, 16 and 68 words. So you're keeping that copy very tight. Like it's usually 3 sentences, like the introduction, why it matters to them, a call to action. You also want to keep all of those, like all of your copy very concise, very straightforward. Between a 3rd to 8th grade reading level is what gets the best reply rates. I personally aim for grade 5. So short emails, 16 to 68 words, concise, straightforward, 5th grade reading level. And we talked about this a bit earlier, that your prospects are not reading your email, they are scanning it. So the reason that you are writing short emails with simple, concise language is to make it very easy for them to scan the email for context and decide not to delete it, so that you have a chance for them to read and hopefully reply later. And then I would say the third really easy pivot that folks can make is audit your emails to see how seller-centric your email language is. And seller-centric emails sound like, hi, Saad, I'm Leslie Venetz, the founder of the Sales-Led GTM Agency. We do X. I want to talk to you because of why our product is, right? It's that I, we, our language. And you want to change the language of your emails to be reader-centric or buyer-centric. So you want to use more you language, talking about the prospect, talking about their company, their challenges, their opportunities, or use customer language. Like if you're going to use we or our language, make it like our customers have found versus I believe or I want to. So 3 easy pivots to write emails that get significantly more opens and replies. Audit for seller-centric language, I, we, our, and pivot that to reader-centric language. 2 would be just much more concise, simple emails. And then 3 would be optimizing for the preview text, which are the first 80 characters of your email.
Wow, awesome. Time and day?
I mean, test it. I usually prefer mornings, but
Okay.
I don't know. I don't worry about time of day actually as much as I used to. What I worry about a lot more now is domain reputation. And why that matters is that instead of, like, I've been selling for 15 years, folks. I used to just do Excel lists with Microsoft Word and do a mail merge and send 300 emails out in 1 minute. If you're still doing that type of mass send today, you are demolishing your domain reputation. And as a reminder, having the strong domain reputation is what lands us in the primary inbox. And if you don't land in the primary inbox, you're in an other inbox, or maybe you're getting right to spam. So that's going to really make it hard to get those open and reply rates. So what I think about now, instead of like I have to get these emails out at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, is how many total emails I want sent from my domain on a given day, and then staggering those emails to be sent throughout the day. If you use a tool like a Sales-Led, you can stagger them even at different intervals. So it's not even like one sent every minute. It's like 30 seconds, 90 seconds, 42 seconds. Like you can really make it appear that they are one-to-one emails so that you do not get flagged as spam and your domain rep doesn't get damaged.
Okay, awesome. So I guess I've pretty much taken up an hour. So anything that I missed, anything you feel like you wanted to add and maybe it's lost in the conversation?
I would say if you are that like founder or sales leader that is either asking yourself, or maybe just in general, if you're that founder or sales leader who is sort of thinking about their strategy from 2024 and feeling maybe some frustration or some helplessness that what used to work doesn't work anymore. And maybe that was that you used to have a really strong inbound funnel and it sort of died up, or your outbound used to get much better results and now you're just not seeing the results that you used to. Don't panic, because outbound selling still works and it works really well. And outbound selling is still the primary driver of revenue for 90% of B2B organizations. But your outbound process needs to evolve, because what worked even 5 years ago does not work today. What was best practice even 3 years ago? I'm thinking of the quick question subject line will get you routed immediately to spam today. So don't give up. Don't question your strategy of investing in outbound. That is still the right strategy, but you do need to acknowledge that it's time to evolve, to be more buyer centric. And because our buyers' expectations are changing so rapidly, that does mean that you will really have to embark on a process of continuous improvement, which can be a bit humbling and it can be a bit overwhelming, but don't worry, you will get there.